Never waste a perfectly good failure. There's a difference between failing and being a failure. There's a difference between losing and being a loser. And it all comes down to perspective. I do autopsies on my failure. You will find principles, tools, insights that will set up your success for decades. There's a treasure in finding out what went wrong. How can I do better next time?
Guys, help me welcome the one and only Pastor Touré Roberts. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm great. Great to be on the show here with you, Stephen.
Oh, man. I have been looking forward to this conversation for some time. I was just telling you a little bit that I really believe that what you're bringing to the marketplace right now is a very, very timely message. You know, one of the things that I read as I was kind of making my way through balance was this essence of most of us have balance figured out all wrong, or we think we're chasing this version of balance, but it's actually something a little bit different. What made you decide to come at balance in a little different direction?
Yeah, it was for that very reason. When we think about the subject of balance and when you hear people talking about it, you never hear someone saying, I'm crushing it at balance. You never hear that.
Yeah.
It's always from this place of there's something that they're trying to attain to. And it's not because there aren't enough books out there on balance or work-life balance, time management. And so I really felt like, I'm the type of person, if there's a challenge in society, I just feel like, I'm unstoppable.
You picked a good one.
Come on.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
picked a good one.
I go for it. And through the process of doing it, I realize that there is a great misconception that we all have oftentimes or had with balance. And that is that you have to try to figure out how to give pieces of yourself away to things that matter. So I'm
Yeah.
married, I'm a business owner, I'm a teacher, I'm whatever, and I've got all these responsibilities. How do I take who I am and give myself to all these different pieces? Well, that's a problem because I can't ration out myself. I can't give 10% of myself to my wife, 10% of myself to my staff, 10% of myself to investors.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I've got to give all of myself. So we're redefining what balance is. So balance is not about giving pieces of yourself away. It's about becoming all of yourself and then bringing your best self to all the areas that matter the most so that you can have the maximum impact.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. I mean, one of the things that I think the marketplace has done is they put all this emphasis on self-awareness or mindfulness they've almost become, there's been so much thrown at it. It's almost become like a buzzword. It's always like a way of just kind of like saying, yeah, I'm being mindful today or I'm being self-aware today. And I know you come at that from a whole different angle, right? It's
Yeah.
not that environment's not a buzzword. Break it down for us.
Yeah, I think self-awareness. First of all, I'm glad that people are attempting to be better. The pandemic happened. So many things have taken place that have put us in a position to really pause, take a look at ourselves, a lot of introspection, and ultimately become better. To recognize, even from a mindfulness perspective, that life has become so noisy. It's
Yeah.
like noisy. And so I appreciate the fact that culture is moving toward becoming better and becoming more self-aware. You can't be healed if you're not aware of what's going on with you. To become mindful because there's so many things pulled at your mind. I take it a little deeper, however, in one place in the book, I talk about the difference between self-awareness and soul
Yeah,
awareness.
soul awareness. Yeah.
And I talk about how soul awareness is like self-awareness on steroids. It's understanding the deepest part of who you are. Self-awareness is like, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. Soul awareness is to be conscious of the fact that there is something very deep to you.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand, if you're not aware of your soul, then you'll be trying to feed a longing that the soul has
Yeah.
with, temporary, very outer focus, physical type of thing. So you can have a longing in your soul for something, and you're like, well, let me get drunk. That'll fix it,
Yeah.
or let me, do whatever. And so I really break that down. I talk about mindfulness. I talk about the importance of paying attention to what you're thinking, because right now there are no boundaries. Everything's coming at you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I loved about the book and just about how you come at life, right? Whether it's the church body, whether it's your entrepreneurship ventures, no matter what it is this essence of the importance of living from the inside out rather than chasing from the outside in. And, that it resonates throughout the course of the whole book. And one of the things that I've seen people struggle with so much is they think, well, when I get this next job, I'm going to be happy. When I get married, I mean, my dream person, right? I'm going to be happy. Like they put all of these things in front of them where they tend to struggle is that inside stuff. And one of the things that you mentioned in the book that I love so much was this willingness to do the deep dive soul search to actually uncover the soul yearning. What
Mm.
types of tips or practices can people to kind of do to kind of find themselves within themselves?
For sure. I think the first thing we have to do is we have to break the mentality that puts a negative stigma around alone or being alone.
Yeah.
You've seen it before. We're out somewhere, we're at a restaurant, we're laughing, all of our friends are there, and we see this poor little lady or this poor little man
Yeah.
sitting in the corner all by themselves alone. And we want to maybe strike up a conversation. But the reality of it is, alone is not a bad thing. In fact, I talk about how that word alone it comes from the Latin phrase "au ana," and it doesn't have any negative connotation at all. The phrase "au ana" means all one,
Yeah.
all one. So to be alone is to learn how to, first of all, to be alone is the opportunity to become all one. And listen, this is such a fragmented society. Listen, you can be on social media and you can go through 90 different emotions in 30 seconds,
Yeah.
as you
At least.
scroll down,
Yeah.
And so we're so divided. So being alone allows you to become all of yourself. And quite frankly, even as it relates to, believing that, things are going to get better when you find the right person, like I wouldn't even want to present myself to the right person until I have become all one.
Yeah. No, and I think people go wrong there a lot. Is they what is the old adage? If you want to change your relationship, change you, something like that. It's kind
Exactly.
of that same thing. When it comes down to being alone in a reflective state or being in the zone where you are spending time with yourself, what types of things are you asking yourself? What kind of techniques are we using to kind of maybe reflect with grace and with peace rather than judging yourself for mistakes, because that's one of the reasons I feel like people don't want to be alone is they're too busy like judging themselves.
Exactly. I think that first of all, you have to recognize that within yourself, there's a path forward. From a discipline, let me back up a little bit. From a discipline perspective, what I like to do is I like to ask a lot of what's and whys.
Mhm.
So I believe that for every feeling that I'm experiencing, there is a thought connected to it. I
Sure.
firmly believe it.
Yeah.
So self-awareness, soul awareness is, wait, what am I feeling? And first of all, it's okay to feel that way, no matter how crazy it might be. We oftentimes, to your point, Stephen, we judge ourselves for what we're feeling. The moment that you judge yourself for what you're feeling, and mind you, it might be something negative. The moment that you judge yourself, you have just stripped yourself from the ability and the power to change it.
Yeah.
Because if you judge yourself, first of all, that's bringing in negativity, and then negativity makes you afraid. So you start running from it.
Yeah.
And now you can't heal it. You're stuck in this thing that you are quote unquote ashamed of. And so being okay with feeling, I don't judge my feel. I can have a crazy, crazy feeling,
Yeah.
and I've learned not to, no, Touré, don't think that. Well, hold on, wait a minute. What is that? And then what is the thought that's creating that feeling? Because and then is that thought worthy?
Yeah.
Because if I can change my thoughts, I can change my feelings. If I can change my feelings, I can change my entire essence. And so I like to break down, I like to understand what I'm feeling, what thought is creating that feeling, and what is that thought worthy, or should it be supplanted with another thought? I'll say this last thing on that point.
Sure.
Insecurity, a lot of people struggle with moments of insecurity. Insecurity itself, for me, is the evidence of some negative, untrue thought
Hmm.
that hasn't been contested. And
Yeah.
so if I'm feeling insecure, hey, no problem. Let me deal with it. Let me address it. Don't judge myself for being, I'm not going to judge me. I'm going to, hey, this is what I'm feeling. What thought? Oh, there's the lie. And then I
Yep.
put a proper thought in there and the insecurity goes away.
Yeah. No, that's so good. In fact, my audience knows I'm a person of faith, and we got our audience is about 50-50, right? And one of the things that comes to mind anytime I'm thinking of self-worth issues, I'm having worth less issues, right? And I think we've all dealt with them at some level or even different levels that you climb along the way, is going all the way back to Jesus sitting down with Peter and he's saying, Peter, do you love me?
Hmm.
Yes. Peter, do you love me? And he goes through this correspondence of helping Peter rebuild his identity, which is one of the reasons why I lean on Jesus so much, is because I feel like when I'm leaning into him, I get to see myself clearer, right? Rather than seeing myself through whatever my experiences are, my situations are, and stuff like that. If you don't mind, can we dig a little bit into the differences between self-awareness and soul awareness one more time? Because
Yep.
if anything of this conversation, I want the audience to take away of this essence. There's more to them meets the eye, and I really want them to take the time to use balance and other tools to get there.
Absolutely. So your soul is the deepest part of who you are. We were created living souls. It's the depth of who we are. And our soul has a longing, and it has a longing for balance. It has a longing for peace. It wasn't created in the context of chaos. So chaos is disruptive to our soul. And when we and so our soul is after something. It's after balance. I'm a man of faith. It's after the presence of God. It's after wholeness. It's after our honor, being all one, not fragmented, not broken. And so when we don't connect with that, we can sense a longing, but we don't know where that longing is coming from. We can sense an uneasiness. We can sense a lack of contentment, but we don't know where it's coming from. So we start trying to feel it, and so we pick up the phone and we call a friend,
Yeah.
or we pick up a remote control and we turn on the TV and maybe we want to laugh at some comedy, or, in some other cases, we pick up, drugs, or we pick up, we go pick up somebody on the corner, it can be sex.
Yeah.
It can be anything, trying to feel this longing that is deep beneath the surface. And so the question then becomes, how do we get to connect with our soul? Like, how do we tap into the longing is there, but we misinterpret the longing. We try to make it physical, we try to make it maybe even psychological, how do we get to it? And my advice and what I've discovered works well is you stop.
Yeah.
You stop. I was thinking I used to think that the most amount of faith to start something is take a leap of faith, to start something new, to launch out into the deep. But I realized that that's not true. It takes more faith to stop than it does to start.
Yeah.
Because in our mind, we think if I stop, then I'm going to lose something. If I stop, my world is going to fall apart. My business is going to go down. Whatever, it's just everything's going to go to poo-poo if I stop. And the reality of it is not. When you stop and you silence the noise and you give yourself permission to be still, that's when that still, small, faint voice of the soul can be discerned.
Yeah.
And so it's work. A lot of people don't want to invest, but it is the greatest investment I believe a person can make.
Well, I think that when you get to that place, you're able to elevate pretty much every area of your life all at one time. I'm a big believer. I've learned to listen to the Holy Spirit when He leads me as much as possible, and to stop challenging, stop distracting. I would look at some things you mentioned as distraction, right? It's just distracting you from actually focusing on you. And I felt like one of the things I'll speak for me personally. One of the things that I used to struggle with was I used to feel uncomfortable with the fact if I stopped long enough to have that be still moment, right? Whether it was a day, 2 days, a week, or whatever that was, to go inside, right? I would start to feel guilty. And I'm like, well, I'm feeling guilty because, one, my worth wasn't necessarily there, but I was also feeling guilty because I should be doing this and I should be doing that and I should be doing this and I should be doing this, and so I began to feel like selfish every time I decided to stop for a moment and look at my life and look at myself and kind of figure out where I'm headed and all that good stuff. And then you said something interesting in the book that even challenged that concept, which I thought was brilliant, which is it's not selfish, it's self-full. It's becoming full of self in I guess in the healthiest way. Would you mind breaking down the what you meant deeply by self-full?
Absolutely. That's from the chapter, There's No Team in I, which is obviously a play on the popular adage, there's no I in team.
Yeah.
And it is about the significance of self-prioritization and how we have kind of been tricked into believing that to prioritize self is somehow selfish.
Yeah.
But it's not selfish. I had to come up with a new term and I said it's selfful. It's to be mindful of self. Now you brought up Jesus just a second. So
Yeah,
if you
he's my
brought up
dog.
Jesus, I'm I'm going to bring up Jesus too.
Come on.
So Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was. Now for me, when I think commandment for me is the instruction that if you align with will bless you in the greatest way.
Yeah.
And so for me, when he says what is the greatest commandment, I interpret that as him asking Jesus, what do I need to align with to be blessed in the greatest way?
Yeah.
Jesus says, it's not an unfamiliar passage, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And then it says, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I think that we have misinterpreted the sequence there because it sounds like if it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, then love your neighbor as you love yourself. It looks like the sequence is God, neighbor, self, but it is not. It is God, self, neighbor. How do I know? Because it says love your neighbor as you love yourself, which means that how you love your neighbor is predicated by the benchmark that determines whether or not you're loving your neighbor well is set by how well you love yourself. I can't love my neighbor as I love myself if I don't first love myself. So the sequence is God, self, as it relates to relationship, loving, focus, God, self, and then out of the overflow of self, you're able to love your neighbor properly. And so here's, we all get guilty. Like when I have to take a few days away, a week away, sometimes as a father, as a parent, I got a staff, all this sort of thing, I start feeling guilty. But I learn that I am not helping them by not helping me. In fact, it's the opposite. If I can't get away, to get centered, to get grounded, to get fresh ideas, to get new strength, to be recharged, I'm not going to be the best husband. I'm not going to be the best dad. I'm not going to be the best leader. I'm not going to bring the brightest ideas to the investors. I'm not going to do any of that. And so I learned that to be self-full is actually to be mindful, not only of self, but those individuals or organizations or circumstances that I'm responsible for.
Yeah, no, it's so good. That's so good. It's funny. I was just thinking to myself, um, most of the people that I know that really struggle with other people also struggle deeply with themselves, right? The person that struggles with being easily offended is often someone who, basically talks trash to themselves on a consistent basis, right? And obviously we want to free people from that in a big way. One of the things that you also mentioned is this, there are key barriers. There's really strong barriers that keep us from actually having soul awareness. And as I began reading through them and really kind of dissect them, I'm almost like, yeah, that's true. That's totally true. That's totally true. Right. So break down some of the barriers if you don't mind, so we can start to work through and help people kind of see themselves in a different light.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is pride, believe it or not. And because pride says, I'm okay.
Yeah, I got it. I know how I am. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't need anything. As long as you are good, then you can't get help. The reality of it is we're not good. If every time I talk to you, how are you? I'm thinking of someone right now. How you doing, man? I'm fine. And then,
I'm good,
no, here it is. I'm good. And then they turn, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
So it's almost like they immediately take the question away from themselves with this knee-jerk response. I'm good because I feel like I have to be good. I'm talking to Touré or I'm talking to whoever. I need to be good. No, you don't need to be good. In fact, it's fake to me. Every time I see you, you're good. Let me tell you something, Stephen. You may call me next week and you may ask me how I'm doing. I'm going to say, hey, I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I realize the importance of being honest. But a lot of times someone has been convinced by something that it's not okay to not be okay. And that's not true. And so I think pride gets in the way of being soul aware. I think another thing also is substitutions. And we kind of talked about it a little bit more,
Yeah.
but I'm doing something, I'm behaving a particular way, I'm engaged in something to cloak the fact that my soul is really hurting.
Yeah.
And here I'm in LA. And so, I'm in, Hollywood and the industry, and I've met some, everybody in this town, you have to be on, like, no matter
constantly.
what, you got to be on.
For sure. Yeah.
And the reality of it is, I don't want you to be on if you're off.
Yeah.
because I can't help you. God can't help you. Your therapist can't help. Nobody can help you if you are on, but you're really off. And so I
Yeah.
think that, substituting things, activities, behavior, I'm on social media, and now because my soul is broken, I'm half naked on social media. Well, what is that
Mhm.
really about? Like
Yeah.
is your soul after something that you're trying to, some void you're trying to fill through getting attention from others. So they're just things with substitution. But then I think that pride, not being able to say okay, are two big blocks to soul awareness.
Yeah. I mean, pride was a huge one for me. When I was homeless, the reason I became homeless was because of pride. I didn't want to tell people I was struggling. I didn't want to tell people that I was showering in a public restroom. I didn't want to tell them anything. I just, because, I had the year before I had had a bunch of stuff and I was doing well and everybody, he's finally the high school dropout's finally going to do something. And then,
Mm.
just boneheaded decisions, lead you down a dark path. And one of the things that I remember was I was looking into a public restroom. I raised my eyes almost like in one of those movie moments where you're just kind of staring back. And I just remember going, how the heck did you get here, dude?
Mm.
Like a year and a half ago, you were like, on top of the world, so to speak, in our area, 19 years old and making a bunch of money and all this kind of stuff. And I had to remind myself or just eh, solve the problem by actually being radically honest,
Mhm.
right? I've had so much growth the times that I've leaned into becoming radically honest, right? Radically transparent with myself. And I find that when people stay stuck, they stay stuck because they're not being radically honest and transparent
Mm.
with yourself. And I feel like it's because they're scared to go on the inside,
Mm.
right? And I know for me, that's where the pride really kind of kicked in for me specifically. And then to your point, one of the other reasons that I ended up homeless because I kept trying to distract myself with stuff that wasn't going to serve me or feed me or help me grow. It was just so I didn't have to basically confront, who I was becoming. And I've always been a big fan as you can't conquer what you can't confront, right? So it's like trying to figure out how do you get to the next step and how, like what does that look like? And one of the things that I picked up on the book is getting rid of a limitation mentality and going into an abundant mentality. How do you see building an abundant mentality, especially if you've been hit really, really hard by life?
I love everything that you're saying, particularly about that radical honesty. And I think the first step is to be radically honest. And the reason why sometimes we can't do that is because we believe that if we open this door and get honest and get real with the fact that there's a monster behind that door
Mhm.
that is growling at us, don't open that
Yeah.
door, don't deal with that,
Yeah.
But the reality of it is you can conquer that monster. It sounds like this big monster. You open the door, it's a little mouse,
Yeah.
and because the hardest thing to do is to actually open the door and that there's a solution. That's the thing. A lot of times I don't want to face it because I don't think there's a solution. And if I don't believe there's a solution, I'll never confront it. Right. But
Yeah.
there is a solution for every single difficulty. There is a solution, and you have to know that. And so once I do that, uh, you asked me. There was a two-part of your question. Give me that question one more time. I'm sorry. That was
Yeah.
a
No worries. No, I just how that plays into shaping an abundance mentality when you've been struggling for
abundance.
so long.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. So once you do that, once you give yourself permission, because there is a solution, then you can come into this place of rest. And there's a chapter in the book where I talk about the gift of rest. When I think about everything that is significant that has happened to me in my life, didn't happen because I was striving. It didn't happen because I was stressed. It happened when I found this rest, this place of
Yeah.
rest. And this place of rest says, I have no lack. I
Yeah.
have no lack. Now, that obviously can sound like something that is absolutely crazy to say in a moment when all you see around you
Is
is
evidence that
lack.
it's not what you think it is. Yeah.
you know, but here is the thing: the abundance mentality doesn't say that everything I need I have in my bank account, I have in my house, I have in my pockets. It says everything that I need is out there.
Yeah.
That from a faith perspective, that God has supplied all of my need, and all I need to do is get into alignment with God's plan, with His purpose, and it's there. I believe personally, no matter how far you get off track, there is a restoration available. And that quote was from something that King David said in Psalm 23. He says, "The Lord is my shepherd; I have no lack." If you dig
Mm,
into that, he literally is saying, "The Lord is my shepherd; I don't perceive lack."
yeah.
So I believe it's coming to a place of rest where you say, "I may not have it, but if I can get my insides together, if I can get my thinking together, if I can get aligned, if I can move away from this sense of I don't have to I do have, I just need to find what is for me, then it will appear." And I
Yeah.
bet that is probably something that you experienced bouncing back from
Oh,
that moment into
absolutely.
now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality was is my first mentor told me a long time ago. He says you have to be willing to do today what others won't, so you can have tomorrow what others don't. Right.
Mhm.
It's probably where I got an affinity for quotes. I love quotes. I love quotes. I love reading them. I love studying them and everything. Right. Because I love how it make you think. And in that particular segment, he forced me in to change the way in which I was thinking, change the way in which I was coming at the problem. I find that when if our perspective is so like pinpointed into our pain, then we can never see the path to prosperity, right? You can never see
Wow.
it, you know?
Yeah.
And as a result, I think that I specifically knew that I was going to have to take big steps and they stay consistent on the steps to kind of get to that next level. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show. Steven Scoggins here. I've got something that I think is actually going to blow your mind. Imagine taking your life and your business to the whole another level. I'm talking about an 8-figure level and beyond. You see, you've been working your butt off to build your business to where it is now. But what if you could work smarter, free up more time, make more money and impact along the way? How much would that be worth to you? You see, I can prove that basic steps, basic mindset shifts, and subtle changes can make the biggest difference. I want to introduce you to the 8-figure mindset makeover. It's absolutely free and it's here for you. It's a powerful summary of my top strategies that help propel me from the streets, if you will, to upwards of 9 figures and quote unquote success as we like to chase it. This is more than just tips though. It's a complete mindset overhaul with simple hacks that you can apply today to begin working on your unprecedented heights in your own business. I would like the honor to share these types of things with you that turn my dreams into reality so you can experience the same type of joy and freedom that I now get to live out in my own day. In other words, it's time for you to build your own unstoppable enterprise. And if you're really ready to take it to the next level and elevate your life and your business, this is an absolute game changer for you. So if you want to take advantage of this free resource, simply go to the show notes and click the link, or you can go to stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. That's stevenscoggins.com/8-figure. Until then, much love. God bless. Let's get back to the show. Take care. Another thing that I love so much about the book is you actually talk about, and this hit home really closely because I've dealt with some of the same imbalances, that they're imbalances that kind of like keep you from having balance, like areas of either focus or intention or action that keep you from that. Would you mind breaking down a handful of those imbalanced things, right for everybody? Because I feel like people can see those identified.
Yeah, it's important. There are signs because to our point earlier, we talked about how everyone is saying that they want balance, which is ultimately saying that I'm out of balance. But if everybody's saying that
Yeah.
I'm out of balance, that means that imbalance has become normal.
Yeah.
And so your question is poignant because how do I know? How can I define it so that I can pursue balance? How can I define imbalance so that I can pursue balance? There are some telltale signs. One of them is stagnation. All of a sudden, there's no move. You can't see things clearly. You're not moving. You feel absolutely stuck. When about maybe 3 weeks ago, you were rolling, but now
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
you're like, whoa, what happened?
It
Now
can
I'm
even be as early
stuck.
as yesterday.
Early as yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. Like, wait, something's going on. Well, imbalance has come in. You need to get back to your disciplines. Weariness is another one. Weariness is a big one because and by the way, there's a difference between being tired or tiredness and weariness. Weariness I define as the gradual gravitational pull down to
Yeah.
the tarmac of disaster. You know, I will tolerate being tired because I can take a nap and fix it. I will not tolerate being weary because when I'm weary, you're gonna have slips in judgment. You're gonna have slips, and I'm just a different person when I'm weary. But weariness
Yeah.
is a sign of imbalance. A decline in your thought life. All of a sudden now you're skewing negative. And so that's a sign. Hey, I'm imbalanced. Jealousy and envy is another one. When you're balanced, you're in your flow, you're in your zone, you're
Yeah.
happy, you celebrate success no matter who it's on. But when you're imbalanced all of a sudden, and again, you can't see your way forward. Your lack of clarity is another one. You can't see, you're stagnant. Now all of a sudden, I am actually offended by someone else's success because I can't access it in my place of imbalance. So those are signs that let you know, hey, you know what? I need to stop. I need to pause. I need to connect with myself, connect with my soul, and get back to balance so that I can get back in the game of life.
Yeah, man. Dude, that's so good. That is so good. I'm reminded, Jesus said, come to me who are weak and weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. And I was just thinking, if weariness is, and a lot of my very bad decisions that I've made in my life, and I've made quite a few. Thank God I've survived most of them. Yeah,
You and me both.
brothers, right?
Exactly.
Is the recipe or the antidote for weariness rest? Right. My team has even been on me. We've been in a push season for quite some time. We hosted a live event back in October. I've got Ed Milet and a few others coming for his book launch at our live event center, and we're doing some exciting stuff. And everybody's working super hard. We're all working, put in a lot of hours, a lot of time, energy. And Brian on my team, he's one of our video technicians, came to me today, said, dude, you need to get away for 3 days. Like you're like, my team has become my barometer. Like, they know when I'm operating in flow, when I'm operating in the best of me. And they also know when I'm not operating in the best of me, So, and I was beginning to feel that weary, right? That it was somehow related to tiredness, but it was more like I'm just almost to the point of exhaustion, right? So is the antidote for weariness rest, or does it go deeper than that?
It definitely goes deeper. I think rest is a part of it because, sometimes the tiredness and weariness get together, get married, have a baby, and it looks like us.
Yeah, that's right.
So you definitely, because sometimes you can't even really access the disciplines, the spiritual disciplines that you need to access when you're tired. So I think that there is a physical rest that you should avail yourself to. But if all you get is physical rest, you may not get the breakthrough that you need.
Yeah.
And so physical rest for me, it's been my experience that the first thing I do, sometimes when I'm in that place and I need to get away, the first day is just straight out rest, But then once
Like
once I get a
like
physical rest, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then once I get that and I kind of get that monkey off my back, now it's time to go deeper. And now it's time to get still. And now it's time to I like to go and revisit the things that I've been told in the past, words that I've received, insights that I've received about my life. Am I still aligned with that? And if I am not, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong. There might be a new instruction.
Yeah.
So I'm really taking inventory of everything that's happening. Where am I? And then I ask the question, who am I? One of my disciplines, one of my daily disciplines, I spend typically between 30 minutes and an hour in the morning. And I'm looking at, I'm meditating, I'm praying. But what's important, well, all of it is important, but I'm looking at things that I know or things that I should know, things about myself, my identity. And I'm asking the question, who am I? Because life will change. And the next thing you know, you'll lose sight of who you are. You'll lose sight of where you're going. You'll lose sight of what matters. All this stuff happens when you get weary. So I'm going back to the drawing board because for me, that time is my mirror time.
Yeah.
So when I go away, yes, I'm going to get some rest, but I'm also going to raise that mirror up to me. Yeah. And I'm going to raise that mirror up and find out if I am in that moment who I know I am. I even do that before I even say hi to my wife because I want to make sure that the right version of me is talking to her. But no, it's physical rest. But then you also got to get in there and do the work, make certain that you're being and are aligned with the highest version of yourself.
Dude, that's so good. That is so good. I think too many of us, we get lost in ourselves without actually searching ourselves. Right? We're lost in our I just got fired, or there's inflation coming like crazy, or God forbid another COVID, or, just all these different things that we put in front of realizing that we have created value that we get to exercise on a daily basis, but we only find that created value if we choose to exercise it in those moments of rest and replenishment, stuff like that. Dude, I love it. You and I could talk for days. One of the things I
For
love
sure.
most about the book here, and yeah, so everybody, I actually have a copy. In fact, this is a highlighter book, folks. This is not a book I recommend you actually read one chapter at a time with a highlighter and a notepad, folks. So make sure you do that. But probably one of my favorite chapters is chapter 6,
Hmm.
The Power of No. Let's talk
Yes.
about no, because yes has got me in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. Well, no, it's one of my favorite chapters of the book, and I have to resort to it because the reality of it is, for a lot of us, we don't necessarily like to say no. To say yes to something, we're asked to do something. To say yes has immediate gratification, instant gratification. You didn't disappoint someone. Everyone wants to be liked and loved, etc. But what I realized was my yes is expensive.
Yeah.
And this is why no is important. No is important because your yes is expensive. And what I mean by that is that if I give out yeses all of the time, and again, I get that instant gratification. Everybody likes me. I'm people pleasing. Everything's good. Oh, he's such a nice guy. When life presents me something that I've been praying for, working hard for, went to school for, whatever for, I don't have a yes to give because
Yeah.
I avail myself. When you say yes, you're availing your time, your energy, your availability. You're giving that all away. Yes is expensive.
Yeah.
And what happens when something that really matters comes along, but I committed myself with something that I should have said no to? Now I'm frustrated. Now I've got a missed opportunity. So I love no. And here's another thing I love about no. No will qualify the relationships that are in your life,
Yeah.
because some relationships, they only work because you always say yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost healthy to throw a no out there every once in a while to see
That's
if
true.
that's going to disrupt the relationship to qualify it. So no,
Yeah.
no is everything. Yes is expensive. And you have to have a healthy amount of no's in order to make certain that you can say yes to the things that you've been praying for, things that matter, and the things that you have invested so much of yourself into.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, a good friend of mine, Dave Ramsey, always says that no is a complete sentence. So it's a complete sentence. It's interesting as I'm kind of like thinking through the no's and stuff like that and what it is, I feel like when we say yes and we're looking for the instant gratification, it's not so much people pleasing as much as it is insecurity. It's like, show me that I'm valuable. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm not affirmed by you, it's almost like it's like selling your soul a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
so desperate because of my insecurity for affirmation that I will even sacrifice myself. I'll sacrifice my yes to get it. I completely agree. Completely.
Yeah. So if we're sacrificing our yes to get it, then we're giving away the most valuable commodity we have, which is our time, right? And I think for me, and I assume for you, because you guys have a ton of things going on, not just with the church, but with business and everything else, books and everything, right? And family, right?
Yeah.
As I've been trying to really focus in for myself and saying no to a lot of things I would like to say yes to. Maybe there are things that I enjoy. Maybe there are things that I would want to invest my time, my talent, my energy, and resource. But if I do, then it takes away from time with my wife, takes away from time with my kids. In fact, I've told my audience here before that one of the biggest things that in fact, the only thing I could think of after everything that I've lived through in my life, which my story is a bit like Joseph. I have one regret, and that was that I chased a personal brand while my wife was still healthy.
Wow.
So I missed 2
Wow.
years of quality time with my wife for an extended period of time because I thought I was chasing an impact. I thought I was chasing this. I thought I was chasing that. And out of that, it kind of taught me the importance of saying no. But at the same time, it also taught me something else that I think it's in the book through and through, but it's something that I want to talk about, which is the importance of confident humility,
Mm.
like being humble in oneself and to kind of get yourself right. How important is being humble in how you approach life?
Oh, it's everything. To not take yourself so seriously. It's funny, this, on Easter Sunday,
Mhm.
my whole message was around the mind of Christ.
Yeah.
And it basically spoke to his humility.
Yeah.
Being in the form of God, thought it not robbery. I don't want to make this a Bible study, but
Dude,
but it,
people know I'm a person of faith. I don't hide it. So you're
okay,
welcome to speak
okay,
how you want to speak, bro.
okay, okay. But it basically talked about his mentality, and in the context of that passage, it talks about how he could have made himself a you know amazing reputation. He was the son
Yeah.
of God,
Yeah.
but he makes himself of no reputation. He comes in the form of a servant. Well, first of all, he comes in the form of a man. That's a major downgrade.
Yeah.
And then when he finds himself in appearance as a man, he humbles himself again. He could have said, "Oh no, no, this is beneath me," but he says, "No, this is. I'm going to submit to this process in humility." And he submits to this process, and the next thing you know, he is being highly exalted,
Yeah.
giving a name which is above every name, and
Mhm.
everything around him now is celebrating
Yeah.
celebrating him and who he is because he made himself low.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. And at the end of the day, you shouldn't think less of yourself. There's a passage that says, "Don't a man should not think more highly of himself than he ought
Yeah.
to," which means that he ought to think highly of himself.
Yeah.
But for me, humility has been the ticket. It is not self-deprecating,
Mhm.
but to acknowledge, go stand on the shore of an ocean, or go stand in front of the Rockies,
Yeah.
or go stand under when you're feeling really important. Go stand out under a night full of stars,
Yeah.
and then tell me if you can make just one of those things happen.
Yeah.
So
Just
the
one. Just one.
reality,
Yeah.
just one, or how about this one? Um, Tell me how you're making yourself breathe right now.
Yeah.
And so to move through life, here's a definition of power, because everyone wants to be powerful. The definition of power is the ability to move through life with grace.
Yeah.
To move through life with grace. And so for me, humility is everything. One, it puts me in a posture of always searching, always seeking to improve. I haven't arrived. I don't have it figured out. It makes me a good listener to God, to life, to those that are around me. And I think, honestly, some of the great things that have happened to me is because I keep how unimportant
Yeah.
I really am in front of me.
Yeah. It's funny. My grandfather was very patient with me as I found my way to Christ. Took me a while. And I remember I would go to him every so often and I would say, "Hey, granddad, this, that, or the other thing is going on with life." And he would say, "Well, Bible this, God this, Jesus that." I'm like, whatever, whatever you think, whatever. He's like, "I'm telling you, son, you just need to dig deeper. You have to dig past the answers that you want."
Mm.
And as I began to do that, I ended up finding my faith along the way. But more than that, I had trust to be able to move on from my shortcomings and the adversities and the deaths and all the things that had happened in my life. And I know one of the core themes in the book that I love so much is the power of trust. My question that centers around trust is how do we trust again when we've been through major life adversities so we can actually set ourselves free?
Absolutely. It's hard because when devastation comes, it attempts to redefine you and reshape you and redefine life. And we have to fight against that. But one of the reasons why we can't get past it is because we don't honor the pain. We and when I say honor the pain, I mean taking a minute and honoring the fact that hey, ouch,
Yeah.
this really hurt me, because that's really the beginning of the grieving process. So a lot of times people don't grieve. If you don't grieve, you can't trust life. Grieving
Yeah.
is a part of the process of getting back to trust. And so I do believe it's important. You have to have a seasonal mentality. You have to remember that no matter how devastating something is, it's just a season.
Yeah.
And you might say, "Well, yeah, but man, my season has been forever. It seems like my whole life has been a season." Well, I'll tell you this, and again, I'm going back to the word. There's this passage in Deuteronomy 28 where the promise is, if you get aligned with God, He will overtake you with blessings.
Yeah.
And so if you can experience and come to believe that life can deal you a series of blows, then you have to find it within yourself that you can also enter into a season where life through God will deal you a season of blessings. I, like you, have been through some challenging things in my life. I remember at 18 years old, my mom threw a birthday party for me, and these words came out of my mouth. Wow, I can't believe I made it this far.
Mm,
Stephen, I'm 18 years
yeah,
old.
man.
And it almost hurts to think that at 18, I felt like it was this major accomplishment. Why? Because my life up to that point had been marked by so much, you know, difficulty, and I lost friends and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
but it was just a season. And so we have to work to believe that, hey, I'm just crazy enough to believe that if I can have an abundance of wrong, then I'm going to enter into a season. If I can just stay positive and do the work, be radically
Yeah.
honest, I believe that I'm going to come into a season where if I experience perpetual disaster, I just believe if I'm still alive and there's breath in my body, I don't believe that God is keeping me alive to take me down.
Yeah.
I believe that my finest work and my finest hour is yet in front of me.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I really strongly believe, and I'm sure I guarantee you the answer to this question will be yes. I know for me, everything that I thought was going to destroy me ended up building the exact steps that ended up building me. I assume that happens to you.
That is so emphatically true. Let me say this. I have a saying, never waste a perfectly good failure.
Yeah.
Because if you will do an autopsy on your failure, you will find principles,
Mhm.
tools, insights that will set up your success for decades.
Yeah.
If you see it right, it's all about perspective. There's a difference between failing and being a failure. There's a difference between losing and being a loser. And it all comes down to perspective. I do autopsies on my failure
Yeah.
because there's a treasure in finding out what went wrong. How can I do better next time?
Man, dude, the next time I'm in LA, you and I are having lunch, a long one.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
'Cause I'm having a blast over here. Well, I know we're out of time, and I know I went over time a little bit, but I appreciate you hanging in there with us. It's rare that I have a guest on. I've been very fortunate to obviously have Sarah on as well, and it's rare that I see so much coming out of so few people. And when I have them on, I just want to squeeze like an orange, get that orange juice out, right? Kind of thing. Where can everybody else pick up Balance, this amazing book? Again, this is one of my favorite reads so far of 2022.
Wow. Well, that means a lot coming from you. They can go to thebalancebook.com, thebalancebook.com, and they can get it anywhere books are sold. But there's a bunch of things that they can, extras and stuff they can get at thebalancebook.com.
Awesome. How about anybody connecting with you on social? What's your favorite place? And by the way, guys, if you haven't found a church yet, check out one.
For sure. I love Instagram. I'm on all the platforms. Instagram is my favorite. I spend the majority of my time there, and it's just at Touré Roberts, Toure Roberts.
All right, man. Dude, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me, dude. Thank you so much. And yeah, you have to keep me in the loop of everything you're working on, man. You guys are working on some pretty exciting stuff.
I certainly will. Looking forward to continue to build. This is great.
All right, take care. Peace.
Okay, blessings. Okay.
I hope you liked that video. And if you did, make sure you check out this next video right here.
When a man experiences adrenaline, that's moderate stress, his emotions turn off. They actually become cool, calm, and collected. That's why these people climb mountains and whatever. They're addicted to freedom from negative emotion.